Hello, hello. Today we will be reading the book of Judges.
Well, not actually reading it. We're just going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
We've already read it.
Judges is like a book about chimneys called Chimneys, or a book about Henry called Henry. It is a book about the judges of Israel.
Who were judges.
Yeah.
But not judges in the way we think of a judge that sits in a courtroom and weighs the evidence from one party to another, but more of a judge that helps Israel get back to God.
Yeah. I was going to say that it's like now this is the book about how the Supreme Court is going to be set up. So we have God as the president. Now we're doing the Supreme Court. Later we're going to get to Congress, I suppose.
I'm sorry, you lost me on that.
It's because I was being silly.
Okay.
It is not like that at all.
Okay.
This continues the trend of the people of Israel kind of being totally whack.
Yes, it does. And it shows that they just went their own way.
Yeah. It's kind of disconcerting because, well, Moses, of course, he lives a long life, and he is kind of the acting spokesperson for God for a long time, for 40, for 80 years, however long. And then after him, of course, is Joshua, and Joshua gets another 40 years. And at the end of Joshua, it even says everyone who knew Joshua followed the Lord.
Yep.
Like all those elders. And so we see that even though Joshua made them all promise to follow God, now we are following the people of Israel. They've been in the land of Israel for a while, and they say, we need someone to help us.
Yep. And the nation of, they're in the land of Israel now. By the time you get to the end of Judges, they've been there for over 350 years.
Yeah.
It's a fairly lengthy time period, as opposed to the book of Joshua is probably a 7 to 10 year period.
Yeah.
So the book of Judges covers a lot of landscape for years that they were there. And there are a whole bunch of judges. I didn't count how many, but these judges that said they bring peace to Israel for 40 years, and then things fall apart. And sometimes it takes 7 years for it to fall apart. Sometimes 17 years for it to fall apart before another judge rises up to bring them back to God. And one of the things that happens throughout starts off in chapter 1, verse 1. Where it says, it came about after the death of Joshua, the sons of Israel inquired of the Lord. And that issue of there's somehow the people of Israel inquire of the Lord. Mm-hmm. They don't have a specific person who is coming before God, and an individual talking to him. Mm-hmm. But as they have failed with each of the, in between each of the judges, then the people presumably get together and they pray and they ask for God to bring someone to deliver them.
Yeah. What's clear is there is some level of continuing this Levitical priesthood. There is some level of following God, but at the end of each of these stories is, the classic line that the people of Israel did what was right in their own eyes.
Yep.
And and then at the beginning of the next story, the people of Israel cry out and they say, hey, why is everything going wrong? And God gives them the same answer every time. You're doing what's right in your own eyes. Try doing what's right in my eyes.
Yep.
And you don't even need a judge. If you would just follow, if you'd follow the law written by Moses, if you'd follow the commands given to you by Joshua, you wouldn't need these judges.
Right.
You would just have God.
So at the very beginning of Judges, we have Judah taking over the land, and I found verse 6 and 7 to be quite interesting. They catch the king Adonai-Bezek, and they cut off his thumbs and his big toes. And I thought, man, that's really weird. I marked it down, and then the very next verse says, and he realized, wait, I did that to 70 other kings. So this is just, payback.
Yeah, I thought it's a funny response from him. It's like, yeah, that seems fair. Like, I was cutting off thumbs and big toes also, so I guess you can do it to me.
Yeah, it made me think, not the thumbs, but the cutting off the toes. Since I'm diabetic, I thought, that's one of the concerns about diabetics is that you end up with your toes getting amputated. And I'm hoping that never happens to me. And certainly I want to keep my thumbs. Those opposable thumbs are pretty important for video games and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what he was using them
and
for.
Eating. So into chapter 2?
Yeah, I guess. I think, chapter 1, just Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and its villages, or Tanakh and its villages, or the inhabitants of Dor. And it's just listing off all these inhabitants that were not driven out. And I thought it was interesting. It does say that one of the groups is not driven out because they have iron chariots.
Yep.
And I thought that was interesting. It makes it seem like the people of Israel were weak, or God wasn't with them, or God isn't strong enough to...
But sometimes, because that's a theme that goes throughout Judges, that they didn't drive everybody out. And I think sometimes it's just because they didn't have the will to do it.
Yeah.
And the obedience to God.
Yeah, it seems more likely than God being not powerful enough that it's them just feeling like, oh, they have beautiful women, like, let's let them live. Or, something like that. In this case, maybe it's they just had chariots of iron, and the people of Israel were like, oh, that's cool. Like, you guys can just, like, stay around, and, like, we'll use your chariots of iron.
Yep. And there's really the big turn takes place in chapter 2, verse 10, where we read that all that generation also were gathered to their fathers after Joshua has died. And there rose another generation after them who did not know the Lord, nor yet the work which he had done for Israel. And then verse 11, we already made reference to it. The sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. Mm-hmm. They did whatever was right in their own eyes.
Yeah. This is following the trend of the last 6 books that we've read, that people are moving more and more towards sin, and God is less and less vocal. He's less and less face-to-face with people. That, starting with Adam and Eve, he's walking in the garden with them, and he's eating fruit with them, and he's making them clothes, and it all goes downhill from there. Even down to Noah, he speaks with Noah and helps him build a boat. And then to Abraham, he walks with Abraham as a friend, wrestles with Jacob, and then is face-to-face with Moses. And then Moses is the last one he's face-to-face with. And now, as the people are more and more evil, God is drawing himself away more. Yeah. He's not really drawing himself away. He's continually saying, you just have to follow me. If you follow me, I'll be with you. I want to be with you. And the people are saying, but I like what I'm doing.
Right. And there's something else that underlies this, which is an issue in our day and age. It has to do with immigration policy. Because first-generation immigrants have a choice to make. Will they assimilate into the country, or will they maintain their own identity? And for the people of Israel, they were supposed to maintain their own identity. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to speak their own language. They were supposed to follow their own God. But the more they became assimilated, the more they took on the sins of the nations around them. And it's interesting because now in the United States, one of the big issues is immigrants ought to be assimilated. They ought to speak English. They ought to, they need to learn our language and our culture and not impose upon us the culture out of which they came. So it's kind of, to me, I thought that was an interesting dynamic because for Israel coming into the Promised Land, the goal was to keep their identity.
Yeah.
It wasn't to become like the Canaanites and the Philistines. Very specifically, they were not to become like that.
Yeah.
That is not to say that the culture of the United States is evil and immigrants, need to keep theirs. It's just an interesting dynamic or difference in what does immigration mean and how does it impact nations?
Yeah, and maybe that sort of question of what do people think is wise and what does God think is wise?
Yeah.
Of just they feel so different and can seem so different, and it's hard to understand. You know, but we read before that the secret things are the Lord's, and that there are other things that, you know, people get to see.
Right. And in terms of immigration, those who are immigrating in our society aren't coming from nations which are the people of God. They're just coming from nations. And I'm not suggesting that the United States are the people of God, but they're both secular, whether it's coming from a Central American, South American country, or from Africa, or the Middle East. They're secular people coming. They're not God's people coming in.
Yeah, I think just with the new covenant with Jesus Christ, that it becomes not a spiritual thing what country you're from.
Correct.
So we see in chapter 2, you know, verse 11, the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and they served the Baals. And so, verse 16, now we get to know what the book is about. Then the Lord raised up judges, who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned away from the way in which their fathers had walked, who had obeyed the commandments of the Lord, and they did not do so.
And chapter 2 is almost a summary of the whole book. You get some very interesting stories in the last half of Judges, but basically that's it. The people called for a judge. The judge delivers them, and then they do what's right in their own eyes. And it didn't drive people out. And Judges 3 actually tells us why. In 3 verse 4, the people who were not driven out were for testing Israel to find out if they would obey the commandments of the Lord, which he had commanded their fathers through Moses. So on the one hand we think, well, why didn't they do that? And Scripture tells us, well, they weren't allowed to because the people were there to test them and test their loyalty to God.
It's interesting how God tests us.
Yeah.
I think, well, in this case, he's testing a whole nation. I don't know how he tests individual people, or, I don't know how he's testing the United States, or if he is, but it's interesting to think about when things go wrong, how much is it the Lord testing? And, the same way we talked about, false prophets.
Right.
How do we judge that, and how do we discern? And there are some ideas about that throughout the Bible, but it's just interesting to think about, and something that's brought up here. Just like you said, they're left to test the nation of Israel.
Yep. And God sends them these judges to rescue them. The first being Othniel, who is the father-in-law of Caleb, which is kind of interesting.
The father-in-law?
Yeah. No, the son-in-law of Caleb. Not the father-in-law, son-in-law.
Okay. Interesting.
Because earlier Othniel was the one who was able to conquer a city, and Caleb gave him his daughter.
Yeah.
And then they got a plot of land in that. So anyway, Othniel, Ehud, and Shamgar, the first 3 judges, all taking place before you get to chapter 4.
Yeah. Ehud is always a funny story.
Yep.
Left-handed man, and it's unclear if there's any sort of idea about what being left-handed means. It's clearly different than, it's like 2% of people are left-handed.
Yeah. And later on, we're going to see that that in the army there were 700 left-handed warriors.
Right. So Ehud is this left-handed judge, and he ties a sword to his right side, because normally you'd have it on your left side if you're right-handed, I guess, so you can reach across and grab it easily. And just having it on your right side is enough to hide it, I guess, from the guards. And he goes in to the king to talk to him, and gets the king to send out all his servants, and slices open the king.
And he stuck it to the king.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. The Ehud leaves, and he locks the door behind him. And the servants come, and they're going to go talk to the king. And they, it says when Ehud cuts him open that the dung came out. And it makes it sound like he cut him in a spot where all his poop is going to come out. And it's interesting because when the servants come, they see the door is locked. Presumably they smell this poop. And they're like, oh, he must be taking care of business. And they come back later and they're embarrassed because the door is still locked. And unlock it and find him dead. But
I was a little surprised at what his name was, because I kind of expected it to be Jabba the Hutt.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He was a big man. Bad enough that the sword that he used was 18 inches long, this knife, and he thrusts it into this very fat man
and can't pull it back out.
Yeah, it's not even seen. It's just buried in there, and just an amazing and kind of gross story.
Yeah.
But Ehud manages to bring peace and prosperity to Israel for a matter of 80 years.
Yeah, he does a good job. Othniel, the first judge, only gets 40 years.
Yep.
And Ehud gets 80 years. And then Shamgar is interesting because it's just one sentence, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Some of these judges get long stories, Deborah being, one of the longer ones.
Yep.
But
and she's the one who's going to come next. Shamgar just
kills 600 Philistines with an ox goad and saves Israel.
Yep.
And it's unclear what that means or how long it's saved or how he leads the people.
Right. But already we are 120, 130, 140 years after Joshua. And you think about our own history, I have absolutely no idea. 140 years, that would be in the 1880s. I have no idea what any of my ancestors were, where they were in the 1880s.
Yeah, I could make a guess about who the president might have been, but I wouldn't even be able to tell you for sure. So
that's because public schooling has failed you.
Yeah, exactly.
In 1860s, I think it was Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And then it was Grant. And then it was Andrew Jackson, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. So it's probably one of those three guys.
Yeah. So anyway, we get into, let's see, chapter...
Yeah, Deborah and Barak.
Yeah.
It always interests me because a big theme I noticed even in this book was the power given to women. The power given by God, or the power, I don't know, just the power that women have in their words and in their actions. That
and how gutsy some of them are.
Yeah.
You take a Jael, Heber's wife, verse 21. She takes a tent peg and a hammer, and she drives it through the temple of the king. It's like, man... that took some guts and some strength, and she is lauded for it. And Barak does not receive credit.
Yeah, that's what Deborah says. Deborah says, "Hey, weren't you commanded to go and do this thing before the Lord, take over the people, take your land?" And he says, "Well, yes, I was, but I was a little bit afraid. I was hoping you could come with me."
Yeah.
And
contrast that to the image we typically have of, we want the men to go to war, but the women to stay home. He says, no, you come with me. Yeah. I need a woman at my side. Yeah. Specifically, Deborah.
Yeah. Specifically, the prophetess, the judge over the land, the voice of God. So I think, I don't know how much I need this woman by my side because she's so strong, but I think part of it might be, it'd be really cool if God was with me, and when you're around, I know he is. So I thought that spoke to me about Deborah's character, that Barak had this idea that if Deborah was coming, then God was probably going to be on their side. And even I like Barak's character too, because Deborah's answer to him is like, okay, I'll come, but you're not going to get any glory. It's not going to be yours. It's going to be someone else's.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Which is pretty humble.
Yeah. It's, he shows off this humility in two ways. First, just to even ask, like, can you please
Right.
come with me?
Right.
But second, to be willing to not take that glory.
Yeah. Chapter 5 is Deborah and Barak's song. And honestly, I got kind of lost in it.
Yeah.
It was, and I think that's probably because it was Hebrew poetry.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like it was going all over the place, and I think it was trying to walk through history and ultimately give credit to Deborah and Jael, these two women, as part of how they rescue Israel.
Yeah. And it is interesting. It just makes me think, I wonder how beautiful this is in Hebrew. If it is beautiful,
Yeah.
it's not in English.
Right.
I mean, it's fine. It's in some way lyrical, and in some way I see how someone could sing it, but I also see that it could be way better, and I don't know.
Yeah,
It's-
it could be more fluid in English.
Yeah, it's by no means a poorly written thing. It has great ideas. It's just weird in English, and some of the things don't rhyme or don't work the way you would expect them to, and it makes me think, how are these songs sung? Like, what these storytelling songs are just different than a lot of the songs we have. So much of our music in the last 100 years that is written is either a short story, much shorter than this,
Right.
or not a story at all, and it'll have a verse and a chorus and a verse and a chorus and a bridge, and this isn't set up like that. It's just
Right.
It's just a long poem, and it makes me wonder, how is the music set up for this, or how are they singing it? When are they singing it? Why would they sing this? Is this, you are a tent dwelling woman and you want to sing a song about tent dwelling women and how blessed they are? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm reminded of one of my favorite songs, "A Mighty Fortress," originally written in German. And since I spent a summer in Germany back 50 years ago almost, we sang that song in German. And I'll tell you what, the words in German don't flow like the words in English, because the tune that we sing "On Mighty Fortress" to was written for the English translation of the German poem "Ein festes Berg," "A Mighty Fortress." Those two don't in any way rhyme. "A mighty fortress is our God. Ein festes Berg ist unsere Gott."
Just the meter gets messed
Yeah,
up.
and so it's an interesting dynamic to think, how did this really sound, and we try to understand the lyricism of it, or whatever that word is.
And the land had rest for 40 years, is how this chapter ends. Yeah. It's interesting. So far, Ehud's the best judge, if we're judging it, pun intended, on how long the land has rest.
And when you get to chapter 6, the rest is over, because the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord gave them into the hands of Midian.
Yeah.
The same Midian
I thought they were supposed to have already destroyed.
This is, Jethro was a Midianite, and so these people just keep on coming back up.
Yeah.
And for 7 years they harass the people of Israel until they call out for another judge, and that judge ends up being Gideon.
Yeah. At this point, in my opinion, everyone is evil. The judges are bad. They do a bad job of judging. Starting with Gideon, every leader that Israel has is bad, from my perspective.
Okay.
So I just think Gideon is a selfish jerk.
Okay.
He's afraid of the Lord. The Lord gives him a specific command, and he says, "But I'm afraid. What if I just go sneak out during the night and do this?"
Okay, but wasn't Moses also afraid to do what God wanted him to do? I can't speak. I know you should call somebody else to do this.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think you might be a little harsh on Gideon. Gideon specifically, but Samson, of course, he makes some really boneheaded decisions.
Yeah.
But also part of it, is that Judges shows us that God works through imperfect people.
Yeah.
And he works in miraculous ways through imperfect people. And even when they are hesitant and they don't do everything in the time we think they should, God still is faithful to them.
I agree that is the takeaway, that God is still good. People can't be so evil that God's good can't overcome it. But I think that Moses has basically just the 2 times, if you want to count him smacking the rock, he has the 2 times where he does something wrong. Gideon, it seems, at every turn, he wants to demand against God.
He's certainly hesitant. He wonders why has God put us in this situation,
Mm-hmm.
and are you really speaking to us? I'll get the fleece wet, get the ground wet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is certainly some of that in Gideon, and yet he ends up being a pretty remarkable judge, and it ends up being a remarkable story in how Gideon is able to bring the people back to God.
Yeah.
Interesting sidelight. When I was in Israel, one of the places I got to visit was supposed to be the place where the creek where they lapped up the water.
Interesting.
It didn't seem like 10,000 people could have been there.
Did you lap up water?
I did not. You're not really supposed to drink unfiltered water from streams. This is a few thousand years later, and
a lot of people have pooped in that river since.
we haven't necessarily been really good to the environment.
Yeah, not all the time. But even with that, I think Gideon, he does do very great things, right? He does bring, the 10,000 men and, bring it down to 300 and trust in the Lord that way. But even, it seems like at the end of his life, he builds a giant statue to himself. And for me, that just leaves a sour taste that this guy couldn't honor God with his life well enough for him to not want a big statue for his own name.
And it became a stumbling stone for him. I think that's what it said there. Yeah. We're going through Gideon and his activities, and most of you should be familiar with what happened to Gideon. If you're not, then you ought to read Judges
6 through 8.
6 through 8, because it's worth investigating. You can decide for yourself whether Matthew's perspective on Gideon is a righteous perspective. Mm-hmm. When you get to chapter 8, the Gideon and his 300 men are trying to get help from others, and from Zebah and Zalmunna, and they won't give him help. So he says, "That's okay. We'll come back and get you." Mm-hmm. And it happens twice to another group of people too, and he does come back and get them. Yeah. Which I thought was a message for us to give help when it's requested.
Yeah.
It's a principle perhaps, but it's not a law or command. Mm-hmm. But we ought to be careful who we refuse to help. Yeah. And let's see. One of the things I liked about Gideon in chapter 8, verse 23, they wanted to make Gideon the ruler over them. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I will not rule over you, nor shall my son. The Lord shall rule over you." And then, of course, it's in verse 27 that Gideon really kind of blows that up, and he makes stuff into an ephod and placed it in his city. and they played the harlot with it, so it became a snare to Gideon and his household.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I'm not going to be ruled over you, but I'm making this really cool thing that you can, we can pay attention to more than God.
Yeah. I will not rule over you. And then the next sentence is, let me make a request of you. Give me all your earrings, everything gold you have. Let me make
earring.
something cool.
Just one earring. Giving an ear. Each of you give me an earring. There were a lot of earrings. Because it talked about, I think it says how much...
1,700 shekels
of gold.
Yeah, 11 grams is a shekel, is what it's saying. So whatever 11 times 1,700 is, 28,000.
It's a lot. Anyway, we're not going to do the math in our heads. So Gideon gives us 40 years of peace because Midian was subdued.
Yeah.
And then you get into chapter 9, and you see the rise of Abimelech. Abimelech, who claims to be king. I always think it's interesting as a trivia question. Who was the first king of Israel?
Yeah.
And everybody says, well, it's Saul. Well, here in Judges, we see that Abimelech gets himself crowned as king. It's at verse 6. They went and made Abimelech king. But he wasn't really. But he does serve as interesting. He serves as king, but he's also a judge, who does bring the people back to God. And it's kind of an odd little story there.
Now, is my reading correct? Abimelech is Gideon's son? Because Gideon is called Jerubbaal?
Yes, he is one of 71 sons.
Yeah.
And Abimelech kills his 70 brothers. And now he was the half brother, because he was the son of Gideon's handmaider, and the others were the true sons, and he did away with them. This is a brutal man. And people recognize he was brutal and very strong, and they were worried about him. And then when they're having trouble, after having kicked him, sent him away, they bring him back. Abimelech is a sad story. The lengths to which Abimelech would go to become the king and become a ruler, ultimately to fail and to fall.
And chapter 9 ends with, and God also made all the evil of the men of Shechem return on their heads, and came upon them the curse of Jotham the son of Jerubbaal. So it seems like God is not in Abimelech at all.
Right.
God is not willing to work through this guy.
Yep.
Who is just so evil.
So then we have a couple other judges that show up in chapter 10, Tola and Jair, and then we come into chapter 11 we have Jephthah, but 10:16, I thought was interesting because it said that after Jair was there, they put away the foreign gods from among them and served the Lord, and he could bear the misery of Israel no longer. That is, God is watching over them, even in the midst of their walking away from him. He's watching over, and he could bear the misery no longer. So he sends up a judge and brings them back. So then Jephthah comes up. He is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the ninth judge by my counting.
Yeah, unless you're going to count Moses and Joshua, then
right.
he's the 11th judge, right?
So Jephthah, actually Jephthah was the one who they sent away. And it wasn't Abimelech that was sent away. Jephthah was sent away, and then when they were going to war, they sent for Jephthah, brought him back, and Jephthah ends up being a judge who is going to return the people, and interestingly only bring them about 6 years of peace. But in verse 16, when they came up from Egypt and Israel went through the wilderness, that was the wrong one. Sorry, no, that's wrong chapter. In verse 26, that was important because it gives us this time span. It's been now 300 years. Jephthah, by the time you get to Judge Jephthah, it's been 300 years since they got into the Promised Land.
Yeah, and then Jephthah, of course, makes this tragic vow. He says that he's going to kill the first person he sees when he gets home.
Yeah. And it's interesting that his daughter is the one who comes out, and she asks to go for a 2-month period, and she does that, and to go to the mountains, and then he fulfills his vow, which is on one hand both tragic and faithful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of those things in Scripture that you go, wow, what's the message here? Don't make stupid vows.
Yeah.
But even if you make a stupid vow, fulfill your vow.
Right.
And
I thought chapter 12 was interesting. This conflict with Ephraim. Or are you ready to go forwards or no?
Chapter 12, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting, this conflict that they have with Ephraim, a fellow tribe of Israel.
Yep.
That so often, up until now, every conflict has been with people outside of Israel. And now they're having this conflict with Ephraim.
Yeah. Which, given the way they often have responded to the other tribes, well, given the way they responded to other tribes 300 years ago, it's interesting. But 300 years is a long time to remember.
Yeah. Now we're talking it's 750 years since the time of Jacob. So
yep.
So it's been a long time since they've been a deeply ingrained family, and even we see, he asks, "Are you an Ephraimite?" And they say no. Then you ask them, say this word, Shibboleth. And they'll say Sibboleth because they can't say the sh sound, I suppose. And I just thought that's funny. It's like, even within 700 years of these people living really close to each other and, wandering the wilderness and, whatever else, that their accents still differ.
Yeah.
And differ enough that they can't even say the right words or say the words correctly, from the other person's perspective.
Now we're going to get into Samson, one of the most well-known of the judges. And actually, before that we've got Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon, who are covered very quickly at the end of chapter 12.
Ibzan with his 30 sons and 30 daughters.
Yeah.
Elon just judges for 10 years. And Abdon has 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. I always think that's interesting. What is that about? Why do they tell us that? He had one crop of donkeys and his sons and grandsons all rode on them together. Sometimes I think we have a big family with, I have 5 older siblings, and it's like 30 of us get together for Christmas. And then it's like Abdon has 30 sons. Has 40 sons. And it's like 10 times as many sons as you have. I don't know. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't.
Would
in part, I can't imagine it because it would take way more than one wife.
Uh-huh.
And I'm happy with my one wife.
Yeah, it would be hard.
So chapter 13 begins the story of Samson. And one of the things I thought was very interesting in this is that throughout chapter 13, which is where Samson is going to be born, we are told about this guy named Manoah, who is Samson's father, and every time his mother is referenced, it's Manoah's wife.
Yeah.
She's got no name, no memory except that she was Manoah's wife.
Yeah, but it's interesting because she's the important one in the story.
Yeah, exactly.
The angel of the Lord is always coming to her.
And Manoah is doing what she said that should be done. So very interesting that Manoah's wife is just Mrs. Manoah. Uh, and I'm guessing she was okay with it because she rose up a Nazarite who comes to be a judge in Israel.
Yeah, these Nazarite vows that we talked about in Numbers. Numbers 6 is this description of the Nazarite vows, which is interesting. One of the rules about being a Nazarite is don't touch any dead bodies. And it's interesting because Samson doesn't seem to follow that.
Right.
But as far as I could tell, he doesn't actually seem to not follow it. It doesn't seem like he kills any person with his bare hands. Did you notice any time where he does that with his bare hands? He does,
Right.
donkey jaw. He
Right.
lights a fox on fire.
And I wonder what was the vow of touching dead animals?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But anyway, Samson is mighty powerful. Kills a lion with his bare hands, and then shortly thereafter scoops honey out of the carcass and gives some to his parents.
He's a very emotionally driven man.
Yep.
And not to be mean, he doesn't seem that smart. Because, tell me, is this a good riddle? Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet.
It is a riddle which has no answer. It has no answer unless he tells you the answer.
Right.
There's no way that you could figure that out. And he's stupid enough to tell his wife that.
Yeah.
And that's a recurring theme for Samson.
Yeah.
He is so.
Yeah, women have total power over him.
Yeah. He holds out for a while, but then okay, this is what it is. This and it always costs him deeply.
But it seems like it's God's will.
Right.
That, even from chapter 14, verse 4, verse 3 and 4, I guess, he asks, can I have one of the daughters of the Philistines as my wife? And they say, come on, you need one of your relatives. Any Israelite will go and get her. Do you have to have the uncircumcised Philistines give you a wife? And he says, of course.
Go get
She's
her for
right
me.
in my eyes.
Yeah. And then the note there.
Yeah, his father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord.
Yeah.
For he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. It seems like the Lord is seeking an opportunity, not necessarily Samson.
And of course, this wife is the one who gets out of him the answer to the riddle. And the end of that is that he's angry and he goes back to his parents' house, and the wife that had tricked him is given to his friend.
Yeah.
Which is going to come back later and make Samson angry and bring judgment on the Philistines. In chapter 15 he gets all these foxes and he ties them together and puts their tails on fire and thereby destroys the crop of the Philistines.
Yeah.
Very interesting life and stuff that we wouldn't think of. First of all, where am I going to find 70 foxes? I think it was 70 foxes.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. It says Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches. I just think it's interesting. I would have a hard time catching one fox.
Yeah.
And Samson's lived a very different life than anything I've lived.
Yep.
But it's still the same world, right?
Yep.
Foxes are still going to run away from you. So it's still just amazing. First he's able to take down the lion in hand-to-hand combat. And then he's able to catch 300 foxes, tie them together, and set them on fire. And he's going to be able to strike down 30 men of the Philistines and take their clothes. So.
Yeah, just amazing, and in some ways unfathomable. We can't relate to Samson. He carries on, and he's brutal, and he is incredibly strong until he breaks his vows.
Yeah.
or has them broken for him. Uh,
Yeah, it even seems that he's actually fairly faithful to God, but it's just weird.
yep.
He's fairly faithful to God, but he's going to sleep with a bunch of prostitutes. And to all of those prostitutes, he's willing to tell his deepest secrets.
Yep.
And it's just a weird guy who, he's clearly overwhelmed by the desire or need to be holy, and is clearly cracking under that pressure.
Yep.
And is doing all sorts of crazy things. He slays 1,000 men with his donkey jawbone.
Yeah.
And it's like, what a great way that God is able to give someone power.
Right.
And what a terrible, horrible image. One man with blood dripping down his, the jawbone that he's holding in his hand.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen a donkey's jawbone, but it's not like a pretty thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And he really has inflamed the Philistines against him. And
Yeah.
they'll do anything they can to get him. Ultimately, he falls for Delilah, and Delilah eventually extracts from him the secret of his strength. And the Philistines then cut his hair, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah.
He gets imprisoned, and he was, I can't remember for sure, I think he was in a mill and grinding wheat for them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It says...
And then they bring him up out of that. It was verse 21 of 16. They seized him, gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains, and he was a grinder in the prison.
But then it says, but the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved.
Yeah.
So for Samson, somehow, even just growing any amount of hair is going to bring him strength back.
Yep.
I thought it's interesting. They say to Delilah, we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. And I thought that was interesting at first. Though, just reading through it, I thought that's, who knows how many Philistines it is, but it says the lords of the Philistines.
Yeah.
So she's getting at least, 2,200, presumably more than that. But I thought that was an interesting number. And I'm just noting that. And then it comes up later. And I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, I wonder how much it would take for... Never mind. for my wife. What would my wife sell me out for?
Yeah.
I don't think my wife would, but...
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit different if it's a wife compared to, this is just, Delilah is not married to Samson. It's just, she's a prostitute for him. So,
yeah.
At least that's my understanding.
Yep, and so he, the Philistines now, they've gouged out his eyes, and they want to make fun of him, and so they have a big party. And I noted this is a big party, and they're going to bring Samson out to make fun of him, and they're honoring their god, Dagon, their god, because they believe Dagon has given them victory over Samson. And so they call for Samson to amuse us. And, it's interesting, verse 27 of verse 16, chapter 16. The house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there, and about 3,000 men and women were on the roof looking on while Samson was amusing them.
Yeah.
That is a big house. And we know the story is that Samson takes the pillars and he collapses the house upon himself and kills all these people as his last act.
Right. Yeah, and he judged for 20 years, so I guess he did a pretty good job, all things considered.
Yeah.
He lasted a long time. Some of these guys are lasting 7 years, 10 years. So, in whatever way, even with his dying breath, Samson is calling upon the Lord and being this judge that helps save Israel out of the land of the lords of the Philistines.
Yeah. We get now into chapter 17, and we're introduced to Micah, and kind of an interesting. I had to try to work to get my mind around what what was going on with Micah.
Yeah.
But in those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. There it is again.
Yeah.
And Micah creates for himself an altar, and he hires a priest, but it's not the he's not a Levitical priest of God. He's just a Levite who becomes his priest. And Micah's all proud of himself.
Yeah.
Now I know the Lord will prosper me, seeing I have a Levite as priest. But he's created a false altar.
Yeah.
And he's a false god.
Yeah, he has household gods, is what mine
Yeah.
says. I thought it's interesting, he says to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you,
I took it.
behold, it's with me. I took it.
Yeah.
I just thought, what is this 1,100 pieces of silver? Is this a number that somehow matters now? I don't know. But it's interesting that Delilah is given 1,100 pieces of silver. Are these 1,100 pieces of silver that Micah took from his mother to give to Delilah?
Interesting.
Did the Philistines take it from the mother and Micah took it back? Who knows?
Yeah. So this Micah person, we get into chapter 18 and 19, and Micah keeps coming up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 18, the Danites are trying to get their territory, and in the process, they come to Micah and they take his idols.
Yeah.
And it becomes a stumbling stone for him.
Yeah. Yeah, they take his idols and they take his priest.
Yeah.
And it's interesting just the way the Levites are portrayed and thought of, that they're these people that don't have their own inheritance, but everyone wants to have them with them, right?
Yeah.
And, for whatever reason, people are thinking this is a good thing that we have these Levites with them. And for whatever reason, the Levites are not willing to say, like, hey, you can't build an altar here and make sacrifices to this random god.
Yeah, and they're going to break one of the 10 commandments.
Yeah.
No graven image. And the Danites, at the end of chapter 18, they set up for themselves Micah's graven image, which he had made all the time while the house of God was in Shiloh.
Yeah.
They're just abandoning God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're totally confused. It seems like at one side they want God with them, and on the other they don't understand what that means.
Right.
They don't understand that God is in the tabernacle, and who knows where the tabernacle is, or how well they've kept that tradition, because it's been 700 years, right?
Yep.
So yeah, and it's interesting. Now we move into chapter 19, and there's the Levite and his concubine. A story now steeped around a Levite again.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even get a name, but he's just a guy who has this concubine, or his wife in some way. And she leaves to go home and be with her family, and he chases after her. Mine says that he went to speak to her kindly and bring her back. So he loves her.
Where is this?
Chapter 19, verse 3.
Okay.
Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. And he brings some donkeys and a servant. And I don't know, it's interesting because this story seems like everyone wants this Levite and his wife to succeed. And, well, not everyone, but the people who interact with him want them to succeed, and for whatever reason they're not able to.
Yeah.
In some way he turns away from his father-in-law, and that's the reason that they don't succeed at that time. But the father-in-law says, "Oh, just stay with me. You can live here." It seems like that's what he's trying to say, is just keep staying here. Don't leave. Where you're going to go, where you have to pass through, those people are not nice.
And it proves they're not nice.
Yeah.
And because the second half of that, and then into chapter 20 is the dreadful story of the rape of his concubine, not concubine, but his maidservant. Mm-hmm. And they abuse her throughout the night.
Mm-hmm. And to the point of death.
Yeah. And then he, in turn, we think, how can this be? But he, in turn, cuts her body into 12 parts and sends them to the tribes of Israel and said, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems it's weird to us, but I'll tell you what, it gave a message.
Yeah.
And the people come together, and that's what's going to take up chapter 20. They resolve they're going to punish the guilty, and the guilty is the people from the tribe of Benjamin, and they go to war, and they have essentially a civil war with 11 tribes against the tribe of Benjamin, and Benjamin is utterly defeated to the point where they
have no more women.
Yeah. And this, by the way, is where we have the 700 left-handed warriors.
Right.
And so, they're utterly destroyed, and there's no more women, and eventually this is going to come back to say, wait a minute, is it possible we were too harsh on them? Because now this tribe is going to be gone.
Yeah.
And they work on a way by which they are able to repopulate the tribe of Benjamin, and again have 12 tribes.
Yeah, everyone promised, none of our daughters are ever going to marry a Benjaminite.
Yeah.
And I feel like their solution is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's crazy in two ways, at least. The first way, I think it's crazy because God has commanded them not to marry people from the surrounding tribes.
Right.
And the second way is, their way is just go kidnap a bunch of women.
Yeah. And tell people that, well, you deserved it.
Yeah. Like, we could have killed you all. Instead, we only took your women. So it's not that bad.
Yeah. And that's going to bring us ultimately to the end of Judges, where the very last verse, what's it going to say?
Yeah, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah, this overarching theme in Judges is there is no king, and everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. Yeah. I think, after this, we see people asking for a king, and God says, I'm supposed to be your king.
And even when they have a king, people pretty much do whatever is right in their own eyes. Because people are evil.
Yeah, because as God's been telling the people, you don't need a king, you don't need a judge, you just need to follow the word of God.
Yeah.
So it's sad the way these sorts of things seem to turn out in the Bible. Yeah. One man killing 1,000 people is not good for anyone. Nobody's happy in that situation.
And
it makes you feel for Samson. Like, why would he want to spend his time with these prostitutes? Well, the thing that God has commanded him, that God has given him power and made him do, is kill thousands of men by his own hand.
Yeah. And God was in that by having the particular women be attractive to him.
Yeah.
And through it all, God is watching over Israel, and God is always willing to come to those who call upon him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's why, for me, I spoke that I don't like Gideon, right? But for me, these leaders of Israel, even Jacob, he tries to cheat his way out of everything, and Abraham lies to everyone about his wife.
Right.
But these people are all anti-heroes. They're not people that are good. They're no Superman with a big moral compass. They are evil people, just like you and me, who are loved by God.
Yeah. What does God say? It's not because you are a great nation. It's not because you're righteous people, but it's because I loved you.
Yeah. And it just, to me, shows the power of God and the steadfast love of God, that in the midst of being evil, God's still able to say, I'm doing good things, and whether or not you're going to be doing good things, I'm still going to be doing good things.
Right.
And I don't know, that's calming to me.
Yep. All right, so those are our thoughts from reading the book of Judges. We'll get back to you next time on the book of Ruth.
Yep. Which starts in the days when the judges ruled. So we're still in that same timeline.
Yeah.
These next 300 years, or these last 300 years.
Yeah.